Hey guys, it's Izzy here, and today we're going to be looking at all the books that I read in the month of June. Now we still have until Saturday for the 1st of July, so I do think I'll finish maybe one or two more books this month, so do keep that in mind as we talk about these books. I'm not going to be giving you all descriptions of these books because I did that in my TBR video, which I will have linked down in the description of this video if you guys would like to check it out. In this video, I'm just going to be talking about my thoughts and my reviews on these books. Let's get into it. We're going to be starting with the book that I finished most recently and then going backwards. So that is Ghostwritten by David Mitchell. This is a part of my 5-star prediction project. I will leave a link to that video as well in the description if you guys would like to check it out. But this did not get a 5-star. It got a 3-star, and let's talk about why. There were plenty of characters here, and we got one POV chapter from each of them. Just one. Some I connected with, some I didn't connect with, but I didn't dislike or hate any of the characters. My favorite character, though, was the old woman running a tea shack in China. This book showed many places that I never get to read about. Mainly places in the East, like Mongolia, places in China, Hong Kong, Japan. So this book was published in the late 1990s, early 2000s, depending what country you're in. So after the fall of the Soviet Union, so it was really eye-opening to see what life might have been like in those countries after the fall of communism. The writing was fine. It didn't really impress me. I don't think I have a single tab for writing in here. Writing are my green tabs. So those yellow ones might look green, but there's no green tabs. The plot was good. I loved looking for the Easter eggs throughout and trying to find out what the greater story was here. The thing is, I finished this last week and I still don't know what the greater story was. I don't know what I just read, and I don't know what the point of this book was, to be honest with y'all. Was it the world leading up to Y2K? That was kind of my thought at the end, but at the same time I feel like no. I feel like that would just be too easy. So I've been reading a ton of Reddit articles, or not articles, but Reddit posts, and trying to find out what this was, what happened here, and what was the point of this book. Now, I'm not going to give up on David Mitchell because I still own 2 more of his books. One I even won in a giveaway in 2021. And I think there is a lot to unravel. And all his books are connected, so that's why I'm reading in publication order. This is a debut novel. I know it's still a highly rated one by people. People love this book, but debut novels usually are not the best book an author is going to put out. Sometimes it is, but not majority of the time it's not. So I'm still going to give him a go. His other books might get better and better, but I always basically give an author 3 chances, and if all 3 of those, you have 3 chances and 3 strikes, you're out, So that's Ghostwritten by David Mitchell. Now we have a 1-star, and that is When the Reckoning Comes by Latanya McQueen. I think this is mainly my fault. I do think this could be bumped up to a 2-star, 2.5, 2.75. So just keep that in mind that I did not read this properly. What I did was I read a chapter every day. Now at the start, that was completely fine to do because they were like 20 pages long. And so I read while I work out, on the cycle, whatever. So I would read one chapter and I was like, this is starting out good. I'm liking this. So, but then the chapters got shorter and shorter. So I was only reading like 4 pages a day in here. So I wasn't really getting a lot out of it. But I do think if I sat down and read this, like a completely normal book, then I would have liked this more, potentially moving up to a 2 or a 3-star. So just keep that in mind. Still give this book a chance. Just because I gave it a 1-star, don't avoid it. But let's talk about why I didn't love this book. It was very vivid. It made the reader, myself, use all your senses to really envision the scene. And it did a great job at painting a picture, painting that scene out for you so it can play out in your head. I liked Mira, who was the main character here, and those flashback chapters showing the summers of childhood. I always talk about that, how it's just so nostalgic, and if I could go back, I would. The character of Jesse, he ruined the book for me. He had no empathy, which I can kind of understand why he didn't, but I feel like if this was longer, they could have built his character up more and just made him a better character, developed his character more. Same with Celine. I didn't hate Celine at all. Like, she was fine. Like, I didn't really have too strong of thoughts of her one way or another. But I do think if this book wanted to be like emotionally hit harder, then develop those two characters a lot more. So making this book longer. And the ending was rather blunt. It was an open ending, which for me, I'm someone, I have to have answers. I have to have it straightforward. Like, you can't just leave it open. I know that kind of sounds weird to say it was blunt, but it was just like, that's that, you know. I just wish this ending would have been better written. Like, I just feel like I wish it wouldn't have been so open. And that's when the reckoning comes. Next, I did a reread, which was also a buddy read with my friend Kat, and that is Beartown by Fredrik Backman. So I first read this book back in 2020, literally like 2 weeks before the pandemic hit. So that's what these like cheap paper tabs are, and then the plastic tabs, and then the tabs where I dog-eared the pages. That was during my reread, except like some I noticed some spots where I may have underlined something back in 2020 but didn't tab it, because this was like when I was first getting into annotating books. So I did maybe add in or dog-ear a page here and there that maybe I didn't back then that I had meant to. Beartown is a book that I love, but it's not a full 5-star. Like, it's so hard. It's like a 4.5. And I don't even know if it's my favorite Fredrik Backman, because all his books I've loved, but I've never given any a full 5-star. I've given 4.5s, but none of them have hit that full 5-star, which is kind of interesting. I wonder if it will ever happen. But let's talk about like my thoughts on this book. And again, this is my second time reading it, so my thoughts didn't really change that much because I knew what I was getting into, but rereading is always a fun experience. And then reading with a friend, it was my friend's first time reading this book. She has seen the TV show, but hadn't read the book. So let's talk about characters. Characters, I only say Fredrik Backman is like the master at writing characters. And in here you have a ton of characters, but they're all so well developed, because this book really tries to build Beartown, build that town, build that community that is it gets divided in this story. Well, first we have a community really strong together because of this hockey team, then it gets divided, and you have to show why these people are the way that they are and everything, and he does a fantastic job. Atmosphere, again, he's building that community, so it really makes this town feel really realistic. You have people from all walks of life and everything, all different ages, genders, ethnicities, all of that, so fantastic. Writing, I think, with Fredrik Backman, I don't think his books are ever really like lyrical or beautifully written. So, but if you want to know which book I think is his most well written by like that standard, by beauty, it's this one. It's Beartown. But it is the reason why it's not 5 stars. It is overwritten. It just sometimes just feels like it goes on forever. That's why the first time I read this, I had to take a week off in the middle of it, because I was like, I don't know if I can do this. And then I switched to the audiobook and fell in love with the story. So I do think if you were reading this for the first time, do the audiobook route. My reread, I read it physically, but if you are reading this for the first time ever, I do highly suggest doing the audiobook for it. And then plot, I think this plot is so important because it's so prevalent to society of towns being divided over rape and sexual assault. In my vlog, I recommended the book Valentine by Elizabeth Wetmore. I think those books are super similar, except that book mainly focuses on women, when this book focuses on like the whole community. But Beartown, I always will recommend it. I love this book. Now we have my ebook pick. So I took a month to read this book, and that is Beach Music by Pat Conroy. I borrowed this book from my grandmother, and I honestly was like, so I've read 2 Pat Conroy books, and again, they're books that I have loved, books that I have enjoyed, but I've never given one of his books, no, I have given one of his books a 5-star, but the books I've read after that, I'm like, I don't know if they can hit that same level. So again, he does a fantastic job on characters. You are at one perspective through this whole 800 pages, so if you cannot connect to a character in that time, I don't know what to tell you, because I really don't know how do you not connect with somebody. over that long, spending a month with that person in that person's mind. And like the way he writes family and everything, oh, it's fantastic. Atmosphere, South Carolina at its core, his books are. This is set, like, it says 3 continents because it does, like, mention Vietnam briefly, but, like, I think it's really only Europe and America that you're really gonna see. But, yeah, even his writing of it in Italy, because Rome plays a big part in this, oh, amazing. I mean, I've been to Italy, so I do know, like, what it's like there, but then South Carolina, his books are the ones that hit the state so perfect. He hits the nail on the head, and just, he understood South Carolina. He writes it perfectly. So yeah, the writing, absolutely fantastic, very descriptive. So if you like Donna Tartt, Stephen King, George R.R. Martin, very similar writing style, so it can be very intimidating. So I do think a lot of people wouldn't like Pat Conroy because his writing is so dense and descriptive. So it might be a bit much for some people. So I only really would recommend his books to experienced readers. And then plot, like, it's an epic. Like, you can't really describe it. Just, he covers so much. But I will say I would not recommend reading his books like back to back to back, because he does use a lot of the same tropes over and over, and a lot of those tropes are very triggering tropes to people, because they are very dark things. So please do be aware. Please do look into trigger warnings before picking up Pat Conroy books. But I gave this one a 5 out of 5 stars. Here's another book that I did the ebook for, but this was a TBR pick for me. So that is Rough Draft by James W. Hall. This is a thriller. Let's get into my thoughts. I was scared going into Rough Draft. Rare for a thriller to have so many point of views, at least for thrillers that I read anyway. They usually just have one point of view, when this had several, and I was like, thrillers usually aren't well written, just from my experience. I was like, how is this person going to develop all of these characters? It's not going to go well. Like, that is what I was thinking when I picked up this book. As the story got going, it was easier and easier to read, and there was no problem with the characters being underdeveloped. Liked that we got the point of view of the victim, the villain, and then, like, the law people. I don't know what to call that. Like, you know, the people who are investigating the case. Like, in this case, we had the FBI. So we got the point of view from all the different people who are involved in a crime. Miami is my 3rd favorite city. I love that place. I was actually there on this day in 2017, so I don't know the math to tell y'all how long that was ago, but this random fact, I saw it on Facebook. But so I loved the setting. I just think Miami and Florida is the perfect place for thrillers. I mean, Jane the Virgin, like, watch that show if y'all haven't. It's one of my favorites. And just, there's a lot of crime in the history of South Florida, so I feel like it is the perfect place. And that is why I picked this up, because Narcos and the Cali cartel does get mentioned in here, casually mentioning a cartel in my video, but they are in here. And so I just really wanted to read something with that said, especially with it being a female lead. The writing was fine, the plot was intriguing, but there were a few out there moments, but it didn't really hinder my reading experience. So I did enjoy this, and I gave it a 3 star. Now we have a graphic novel pick, and probably I would say the most popular book in this video, because it also has like a TV series and all of that Netflix series, and a lot of merchandise that I only see at Target. So the book that I'm talking about is Heartstopper by Alice Oseman. I actually got this book for free at Target on Black Friday, but this is a graphic novel, as I said, so I do not give star ratings to graphic novels, but I still write a review, so I'm still going to tell you all my thoughts on this. This book is exactly the way it's described on the back. There were no surprises. I honestly expected this to be so much more, just because all the hype that surrounds it. It was really just the basic story, basic trope of the jock falling in love with the, like, nerdy guy, quiet guy. Like, we see that in so much High School Musical, Glee, and a ton of other places. Like, that's such a common trope. So, but I mean, I feel like a lot of books we have common tropes, but I feel like I could have told you exactly what would happen in this story just by the description. Like, what I would guess, like the very blatant, bland, like, I could have told y'all what would happen in this without reading it. That was a fine story. The artwork artwork was cute, but I really don't understand the hype around it. It did remind me of the Netflix show Sex Education, which I do really enjoy, maybe just because it's a high school English setting. But yeah, it was just a fine time. I don't really understand the hype. I'm not jumping to go pick up the next one, but yeah, I know people love it. Let's go to a nonfiction one now. This one I did do the audiobook for because it's a brick, and that is Mary Queen of Scots by John Guy. I love how this started with the end of Mary's story, and because we know what's coming, it cannot be avoided, so we just dive right in with that. This is a deep dive into the story of Mary Queen of Scots, and it's told from her side because history is often told by winners, and Mary wasn't really a winner in her life. Me included, she was a tragic heroine. Mary Queen of Scots was the woman who started my love for history. I saw the show Reign when I was in high school. Now, I'm not like jumping to recommend that show. Like, it's fun and it's entertaining, dramatic and all of that. But if you want historical accuracy, don't go there for that because there are a lot of inaccuracies. But it's still a good, fun show, but I don't recommend watching it for like historical research or anything like that. The show that and The Last Kingdom were the shows to get me into historical fiction and watching period dramas. Even got to visit Mary's grave when I visited England a few years ago, and just it was so amazing for me getting to be that close to the woman herself. That being said, she's a woman who greatly influenced my life, so I was super happy to finally read this and get to hear her story kind of from her side, even though it is 500 years later. Give Mary Queen of Scots a 4 out of 5 stars. Let's move on to the last book of the video. Thank y'all for sticking around this long. And that is American Dirt by Janine Cummins. I did give this one a 3 out of 5 stars. Let me tell y'all, the characters were something in this book. Luca, so he's the son in this book, and he just would act very young, like a child, and then he would switch to being like a super genius, and honestly, like, I don't know, he was like two different people. Very strange, but I can understand how a child would be hard to write. I can understand how it'd be difficult, but at the same time, we were all children before, so I feel like it shouldn't be too difficult. But again, I've never tried writing a child character, so I can't really be the judge of that. Inside, it was hard to believe this kid was supposed to be 8 years old, because sometimes he read like a 3-year-old, and sometimes he read like a 60-year-old man. And Lydia, his mother, she was smart, but wasn't. Like, she had common sense, book knowledge, but wasn't street smart, and she was very naive, and sometimes that was just hard to read from. Wait, I think I got that reversed. She was book smart, but not common sense and street smart, so which I would probably be completely similar in this situation, but just it was hard to read and she drove me up a wall at times, if I'm being honest with y'all. This was completely overwritten. You know that when there's paragraphs as long as pages, I just don't do that. That's too much for me. I'm going to skim. But this story is why I stayed. I've never really read anything, nonfiction, fiction, articles about the trek from Latin America to the United States, because that's something we hear so much about on the news and in politics and all of that. I've never actually looked to research that myself. The closest I've read is Infinite Country. I cannot remember the author of that, but that book's fantastic. Totally recommend picking up because I think about that book all the time. That one's definitely better than this one, but that is a whole completely different story. But so I've never really read too much about that. Of these people crossing the border and all of that, so I was really hooked because I was interested to see how all that goes down. Good book overall. The story was interesting, but the characters weren't that well written. They didn't feel like real people, but I would still recommend. But if you guys have recommendations for nonfiction and fiction books about Latin American immigrants coming to the United States, please let me know, because I am super interested and do want to know more so I can have a better opinion on that. It's a long video. I've been filming for nearly 25 minutes. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you made it all the way through, leave a bird emoji in the comments below. And as always, comment, rate, and subscribe. And don't forget to ring that notification bell to be notified when all my videos will go live. I'll see you in the next one. Bye, guys!